As you go on down the block, this building here is where we currently have storage. We're going to empty this building. We're moving all of our storage over to this site over here. This is a site that could be potentially a development site. We got a cost to demolish this building and do all the environmental remediation and build a parking lot to help try and, deal with some of the parking crunch of this area. Unfortunately, those estimates are over $1 million, so I'm not sure if we're going to do that to create a parking lot. It's an enormous building, so it has a huge environmental remediation cost, and it has a huge demolition cost. And then there's cell towers on the roof of the building that we would have to relocate because they have a long-term lease, so it's complicated. But we're looking at as many options as we can to relieve some of the parking crunch at this end of the campus. We're in discussions with the Department of Labor about purchasing this property on the corner, the Jobs Corps property. Essentially, if we find them another site, they'll move, and then the university would own all the way down to the corner except for that little wraps thing there. As you go up the block here, the law school is looking at an expansion that would take out these two buildings right here. Family Development Center would have to be relocated. The former Family Haven, that was the homeless shelter for families operated by the Salvation Army, they moved, they sold that property to us. So the law school is looking at an expansion that would go east, take out those two buildings and be a nice expansion for the law school. So we're working on that as well. When you start to get up toward this end of the campus, you'll notice that the university's got a lot of property. If you can tell, the shading is the property that the university owns, and the blue is where there's a structure. So the university now owns the state office building that's located on Lindell, just east of Grand. It's a very large building, over 100,000 square feet. The state of Missouri still is occupying the building. They will not move until next year. So while we have closed and we have this property, we actually own it now. The state is still occupying this and this large parking lot until next March, at which time we'll take possession of it. One of the things that we're evaluating right now is, we had put a request for proposals out for a development on this corner at Grand and Little, just kitty corner from the college church, a year ago, about 18 months ago. The proposals that we got back, while they were okay, they were not phenomenal proposals. So at the request of our trustees, we pulled back, we withdrew the request for proposals. We did not accept any of those development proposals. And what we're considering is going back out with a much larger development site. Every developer that we talked to about doing something here said, it's a 1 acre site, it's very crammed. By the time you try and put parking and everything onto this site, it's just a hard project to do. If they had this entire site, we would leave Vito's, the Beyond Vito's building, and the biomedical engineering building. But if this whole thing right here became a development site, it could be a much more spectacular development. And when I say a development site, the university would retain ownership of the property because we've been here almost 200 years. We want to, 200 years from now, we don't want a president saying, boy, I wish they had never sold that corner. We have to go back and buy that out. So anytime we do a development, we're going to do it under a ground lease where the university retains control of the land. They can get financing on their development because they'll have a long-term lease, which in law can constitute ownership. But at the end of that lease, whatever improvements are on that come back to the university. So if there's a development here with a 50-year lease, we get lease payments for the ground for 50 years, and then at the end of it, we own whatever's on it. You have a question?
Is there any talk, so that would be an outside development, not affiliated with the university?
Yeah.
So there's no talk about putting in additional classrooms or anything there?
No, what we would do is, we definitely have a need for more space. The question is, do we keep this building, which if you can visualize it, it's not attractive, it's sort of like the law school type design, it's just a box. It looks like just a box, it's got those slitty windows. It's just not a building that you can do a lot with. What if the development community is willing to pay enough that they cover the cost for that building to us, we don't care if they tear it down, and then we can reserve floors in the new development. So let's say the new development has ground floor retail, and they've got Panera Bread, and they've got, I don't know, a full-scale restaurant or a bar or something. Then they may have a couple levels of parking. Then they may have, we may take 3 levels for classrooms, offices, or whatever, and then they may have residential above. And the residential could be market rate condos, it could be $500,000 condos, it could be, you know, $200,000 condos. I mean, that's when the development community comes in. We see what they think the market will bear and what would be a good fit. A number of developers have talked to us about doing 55 active adult, sort of like an alumni housing thing, where people that are empty nesters, they would like to move into a condominium, they don't want to have a home anymore, but they'd like to live close to a university. They can use the library, they can go to lectures, they can go to little concerts. A lot of the developers that have met with us about this are excited because they think that the location here has a double benefit. If you're a 65-year-old retired individual and you move in here because you're affiliated with the university, you're a Billiken basketball, you also can walk to the symphony, you can walk to the Fox Theater, you can walk to the Pulitzer. So there's a lot of cultural attractions that it's like a double benefit. So the location for certain types of things they think is a double draw. But if the development community says, no, because of what this costs to buy, because it's a fully occupied building, stays still in it, good shape, well maintained. So obviously, we pay more for this property than we would for like a vacant piece of property, let's say. If we can't get our investment back out of it under a ground lease, then we'll just go back out on the market for this and we'll use that building. But there's a lot of investment that goes into a building, even though if it's in good shape. It has to be connected onto our IT network, so it's got to be wired, it's got to be, and even though we have wireless, IT's position is that we do both. I guess maybe we could do wireless only and not have it hardwired into the backbone. But you know, this building where the state is now, if you walk in, you just see a whole, it's a huge floor plate and it's just cubicle land. So obviously the university doesn't need just floors of just massive amounts of cubicle people. We would need classrooms with walls, we'd need offices with walls. Where every time you build that stuff, you have to redistribute utilities, you have to, you know, do ductwork into each office so everybody's got heat. So before we make a huge investment into occupying this building, because once we invest a lot to move in there, then we're going to be in there for a long, long time. So that's one of the evaluations we're doing now. And then there's a developer that we've talked to off and on that said if and when we got this site, which we, even though we own it now, the state still uses it till March, is interested in building a parking garage here with a digital movie theater above it. I guess there's no digital movie theater in the city of St. Louis right now. It's, you know, better quality. Whether or not, they seem to be working in other markets. There was also talk that during the day, then if we had need for digital teaching in classrooms and stuff, we could, you know, possibly use it during the day and then it could be a theater at night. So, my point for going into this whole area is all this property that you see that we own up here, with the exception of this little enclave right there, we bought this property thinking that we were going to build the arena there. So when we decided to build the arena, this was going to be our site, and we started buying parcel by parcel, property by property, and then when we got to the Drake, the discussions broke off. So we had already assembled this property. We couldn't get the Drake without condemning it. We didn't want to condemn them. So then we picked this site. Well, actually, we were in school. Then the Board of Ed decided to close that school. We bought it, and that became the arena site. So the question is what you do with this property up here. The buildings upon Locust here have all been qualified for the National Register, which means that they get historic tax credits, which means, like there's a building right on this corner, the roof has literally fallen and there's no roof on the building, and developers come by and they're like, oh, we love this, we could do this, we could do that, and it's because they get the tax credits. if the tax credit law was still not in effect, as it wasn't from like the late 80s into the 90s, all these buildings would be torn down because nobody would invest in them without the tax credits.